Hey guys, thanks for joining us here for our second episode of Cage Side Convos. I'm Rick, here with Quince.
What's up, guys? Thanks for joining us once again. If you watched the first episode, we talked a lot about Hold Down Upstate and the ideas behind that. And we also talked about what led to the idea behind the process. So I was able to introduce myself, and one of the things I think that came from the idea of the process, or going through the process, was your organization, Day One. So, I just wanted to spend some time today and introduce you guys to Day One and kind of, what the ideas are behind that and how that came into fruition.
Cool. So Day One, obviously, some of you familiar with it a little bit. The platform, we're coming to you live off of, is kind of a mindset. I started about a year and a half ago or so, kind of as a lot of, getting out of the murk, stories start. Went through a breakup, started drinking a lot. Really was letting my depression kind of get the better of me, which I think is kind of a story that resonates with a lot of people. Alcohol is a coping mechanism, all these things. So I kind of let that run, making, just kind of a lot of questionable decisions, spending a lot of money doing a lot of, stuff other than taking care of business. It was affecting, obviously, my interpersonal relationships with my friends and stuff, and then it started affecting my work a little bit at the gym. I was not being a good coach. I wasn't a good student. I wasn't a good training partner and stuff. I was just always tired of, hungover, everything that goes with it. And eventually it got to the point where I got sick of living like that. One of the big turning points actually is I went out and visited a buddy of mine in Wisconsin, kid that had trained with us when he lived here. He moved back home after he got out of the Army. And I went back and hung out with him for a couple weeks, trained with him, helped him through fight camp and stuff. And while I was out there, kind of observed a little bit of how he was living his life. Kind of just daily, every morning we'd get up, he had a routine. He was, cooking breakfast. We'd go to the gym and train, come home. He was doing stuff around the house, just really motivated and disciplined was the biggest thing I saw while I was there. So I kind of had my aha moment one morning when I was there. It was, night. I'd gone out, hanging out, having fun, meeting guys out there, drinking, and we got back to his place and he went to bed. He's in fight camp. He's not doing any of that stuff. And I'm just sitting there, just drunk, 2:00 in the morning, just drinking beers, and for no reason at all other than just kind of that's what I was doing to do it.
Right.
And it hit me that what the hell was the point of doing it?
Right.
And, so when I got home, it was like the first big decision I made was to quit drinking, right? And I was able to be successful with that for over a year until I, decided that I would try dabbling in it again. But so started out just kind of, I need to be sober, right? And that was difficult because it had been such a staple of my life every single day, So I kind of was just, take it one day at a time, get through the day. And during this, I had another good friend that was kind of going through his own thing in his own way, but he was sending me motivational videos every morning. 6:00 in the morning I wake up and Eddie had texted me and I have a YouTube video and I made myself watch it. He had taken the time to send it, so I started making myself watch it. I make myself do these little things. Then he gives me a book to read, Make Your Bed, by, who is it? I always mess up the guy's last name. We'll throw a link for that book down in the comments when we're done. So it's Make Your Bed, and it talked about basically the mindset of if you start every day making your bed, you've accomplished one small thing for that day. And then it kind of snowballs into bigger things, right? So I'm starting watching these motivational videos and I'm reading this book and I'm starting to make these small changes and stuff. And basically through all of this, I started developing the mindset, just clicked with me one day. If I can do something today to get through it, and not only get through it, not that, kind of the difference between one day at a time where it's like you just struggle to get through the day, and as long as you make it to the end of the day, you're good. I switched that mindset to not just get through the day, but to do something productive, you know. And a lot of that, again, started with something simple like making my bed and being productive that day, and being better for myself, and ultimately being better for those around me. And by and by, these things start to add up, you know. I started to cultivate the discipline. I was making my meals again. I was holding myself accountable for the decisions that I was making. And instead of just letting the depression get the better of me, I was learning to understand that and learn that no matter how I felt, if I felt depressed or anxious or mad or like I wanted to drink or any of these things, it didn't matter how I felt, I could still be productive, and I could still learn and progress and better myself, and, you know, and make a productive change, you know. So that mindset, as it became a habit of every single day of making progress, I started to dive and explore more things, exploring like gratitude and vulnerability and just the different ways that these affect your life. And yeah, now it's practice habits have become, you know, natural, and now I get to explore and continue to, you know, dive into that, like personal enrichment and stuff.
Yeah, you know what? One of the first things that stands out is that a lot of times with these transformative stories, they always start with that kind of rock bottom sort of feeling,
Yeah.
or situation, and you know, I think a lot of people go through it. You know, if not everybody at certain points in their life, but a lot of times going through it is hard to understand yourself if it's just you going through it, and it's even harder sometimes to communicate that to somebody else
For sure.
who's not going through it.
For sure.
So, you know, all these, you know, these friends, these names pop up that you kind of had in your corner, maybe without you knowing how or why they were existing there, but that help you realize that you were sitting in that, you know, sitting in that rock bottom place.
Right.
And instead of just dwelling in there and using the same coping mechanisms,
Right.
you know, you were able to kind of take a step back, or they were helping you to take a step back,
Sure.
to kind of see where you're at. So I
Sure.
think that's, you know, I think that's very important, because it's easy to get stuck in those phases, especially when you don't have any other outlet. And I think the term coping mechanism or lack thereof kind of gets us in a lot of those situations to begin with.
Sure.
'Cause
Absolutely, yeah. It's so, you know, you develop those coping mechanism because it works one time. So like obviously alcohol or drugs are easy coping mechanisms to
Sure.
go back to, and then you start looking at behavioral coping mechanisms like lashing out, anger, projecting insecurities, and all these other things. You know, because the first time we do it, we find a little bit of comfort in it.
Yep.
Okay, so the first time you're sad and you drink to deal with that sadness, and it makes you temporarily feel better, you know, it kills that feeling. Oh shit, this is awesome.
Right.
You know, and so you go back to it. So again, same thing with drugs, any kind of addiction, and it becomes you know, our go-to mechanism. We don't have to think about it anymore because, you know, we feel like it's always working. And then next thing you know, I mean, for me, I really isolated myself from the entire world.
Right.
You know, and I would get home, I'd leave the gym at 10 o'clock at night, I'd stop and I'd grab a tall boy and just drink it on the way home. So when I got home, I already had a buzz, and I didn't have to think about being alone in a dark house.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you create this, you cope with the isolation, and a lot of times it's self-induced, you know? And that, I think, understanding that it is a mechanism, and forcing yourself to understand why you're using it. You know, why am I drinking all the time? Well, because obviously I'm unfulfilled.
Sure.
And then gets into, you know, exploring that darkness, exploring why you're unfulfilled, and then it gets back to that notion of purpose and
Right.
of finding that purpose, and a way, you know, because if, and we talked about that a lot last week, and a lot of what, you know, you went through, you're just kind of meandering through the wilderness, and you don't really feel like there's any reason for it, and it makes it hard to deal with those dark times. You
Right.
know, if you feel like there's no light kind of at the end of that tunnel, you know.
Sure. You know, drinking, drugs, a lot of things that we might fill the void in, don't really lead us anyplace. You have a tall boy on your way back home.
Right.
In another couple weeks, you need two of them.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, to try and get to that same, you know, just that same state of mind or feeling. I had a friend one time that told me that maturity was, and because he was going through very similar things too, you know, heavy alcoholism, He'd work hard. You know, he'd have a family that he had to support, so he'd work hard for them. And after that, he'd go right to the fridge, get his drinks, turn on the TV. And he's like, man, I'm getting older, I'm making more money, but I'm not happy. You know, I'm not happy with this. I've got a great family, but I'm just not happy in general. And he's like, you know, he was reading a lot of, I think it was like Tony Robbins, kind of was the starting point for him, that kind of propelled him into things like that. And he's like, maturing is how we spend our free time. You know, the ways in which we spend our free time is usually what we become. You know, because a lot of these things don't give back to us as far as the booze or as far, you know, say even eating. You know, there are a bunch of different things that people could fill that void with. But, you know, he and I started talking about how, you know, as coping mechanisms or in free time, we need to fill that with something that's going to give back to us. Where now we're going to, a week, a month, a year from that date, there's going to be progress. You know, you might not see it on the day to day, but when you look back, it's a clear, you know, you get the clear picture. So, you know, I think that's super important. Something else that is interesting that I would like for you to kind of expand upon is the distinguishment from day one to one day at a time, because I think that's super interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of touched on it briefly, but I think, and a lot of people that I've talked to, especially over, you know, probably the last like 6 months or so, you know, having the conversation, everybody's like, yeah, man, I know what you mean, you know, just taking it one day at a time, and you know, I think it's, I try to respect everybody's process and everybody's approach, and I mean, if that's what's perpetuating you getting better and stuff, I appreciate that, and you know, hope it works for you. For me, I think there's a different distinction, because if you focus on, you know, I just got to get one day at a time, just got to make it through today, I think it instills this kind of like survival mindset.
It's passive.
Yeah,
passive.
Absolutely, yep. And what I try to focus on, I talk a lot about personal enrichment, is like every single day, you know, try to get a little bit better, right? So it goes from passive, like you said, David, now becomes active. So now we're taking control and we're making ourselves better, and that's where kind of like the discipline settles in and stuff. And what really kind of made day one pop for me was thinking in the context of starting a new habit, right? Say, I want to start a diet today. I want to start my new exercise program. I want to start my new job today. Right? That first day one is, a lot of times it's like the best day, because you're pumped about it, you're excited about it, and you're gonna crush it that day, right? And that's the mindset going into it. Or sometimes it's like the worst day. Sometimes you're like, all right, first day, and you're like, man, that sucked. Like I messed everything up with my new job. My boss thinks I'm an idiot. I'm never gonna be successful with this, right? But at the end of the day, you're like, all right, I did it. It's done. You know, I still made these steps. You know, I tried my hardest today. I put in effort to become a better person, and it's done. You know, and the next day doesn't have to be that bad. The next day, it's our chance to start over. And every single day that you get up, it's a chance to approach that day, approach that, you know, your life with a little more vigor. You know. And we touched a little bit last week kind of about the difference between motivation and discipline. You know, some days we're going to be motivated. Some days we are going to crush it. Some days it's going to be like that first day of, you know, of your new job, where you go in and it's like the most exciting thing you've ever done. First day of your diet, you're like, man, I hit my macros perfectly. I did all these great things. I'm going to change my whole life. And you wake up the next morning finding that mindset again, you know, finding that disciplined mindset. Or, you know, if you wake up and you feel shitty, you feel sad, you feel depressed, you feel anxious, you feel like you're not going to get anything done. Taking that commitment to yourself seriously, taking that discipline seriously, and using that day to still, despite those bad feelings, make something of it. You know? So instead of just getting through one day at a time, you're capitalizing on day one, you know, of that start, and really of the only day that you have. You know, is today, is the first day, you know.
And I think that all goes back to purpose, like we talked about, because purpose is really your foundational point that you come back to. So now your rock bottom is you refine that purpose again. Because I think it's important for people to understand that on these journeys or going through this sort of process, it's not, you're not gonna hit every shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not every day is gonna be your best day, and you are gonna fall back. I still fall back at times.
Yeah.
You know, I'm
Yeah.
sure
Oh yeah.
you go through the same thing. And you know, and we all have our different processes of getting back out of that. I think I spoke a little bit on it last week, talking about sometimes when I wasn't motivated, I just did the work anyway.
Yeah.
I had to get into, say, if it was, you know, writing a song or something like that, I would just get into writing.
Yep.
Nothing in mind, just get into writing, see what comes.
Yep.
And usually that, you know, because all those paths are connected, you know what I mean,
Right,
as far as
right.
those neural paths. And once you start getting them activated and exercise a little bit, man, I'm right back into it.
Yeah.
Do you have a certain process when you find that you feel like you're kind of out of the loop to get back into it that you do?
Yeah. I like that notion of kind of going through the motions. You just get in, you do the work, especially so martial arts training, right? That's my, you know, that's kind of the purpose I found in life, is that I can make a difference very specifically through coaching martial arts, through coaching Muay Thai, through coaching Jiu-Jitsu, and through you know, helping other people kind of physically better themselves, mentally better themselves, and find that, you know, spiritual journey. But what's very difficult about training is that some days you show up and your body hurts.
Yep.
Some days you show up and you're tired. You know, some days you put in a line, you know, you hit 2 or 3 sessions a day, you train for 4, 5, 6 hours a day, and the next day you feel like shit. You know, very recently I had an episode where I came in to train one night and I was just out of it. Actually explains a little shiner.
Is that
I
the
got on
shiner?
my-
Okay, got it. Yeah.
Yeah, so just kind of, I wasn't in the zone, you know, mentally I was disconnected, physically I wasn't feeling it, you know, and that was one of those days where I had told myself, just come in, just go through the motions, just start moving, and even if you don't feel better while you're doing it, you feel better afterwards,
For
because
sure.
you're done,
For
and,
sure.
and you did it, you know, and you didn't let that mental disconnection, that physical disconnection stop you from progressing as a person or as an artist, you know, and moving in the direction of your purpose. I think that's such a huge
like that.
thing, you know, is as you develop that process, it has to be goal oriented. And like you said, when you sit down and you just start writing, you don't always know where it's going to go.
Right.
You don't always know how your purpose is going to manifest itself. You know, you have an idea, you have a picture, right? And then you have all these pieces. You don't necessarily know how they're going to fit together, but a lot of times, all you can do is start exploring that space. Start setting the pieces down and start seeing if you can distinguish that picture, you know, because you know what you want it to be.
Yeah.
You just don't know how it all goes together, you know, so you...
Goals over destination.
Yeah, man,
Goals
absolutely.
over destination. You know, for example, when I first started taking music serious,
Right.
it was to find something that helped me to zone in, that was a productive use of my time,
Right.
and that I could see constant growth, because I needed
Yes.
to see constant growth.
Yeah.
And so honestly, I wasn't even rapping. I wasn't even really writing like that. I was making beats.
Okay.
So in my mind, I'm like, oh, the destination. I'll make, you know, beats for people. I'll make the soundtracks for movies and stuff like that. I didn't really know, but in my mind, that was the destination. But through the work, I've seen it change so many different times.
Yes.
You know, to now be, you know, have the microphone in a live band.
Right,
I didn't
right,
foresee that whatsoever.
Right.
But that's the sort of opportunity that work brings, and constant work. And you got to
Yes.
stay open to these sort of different opportunities that come into play.
Absolutely.
But all only recognized through that work itself. So,
Right. I think that's crucial too, is accepting that it's not a definitive. The first time you say, I think this is what I want my purpose to be, you know, it's not necessarily that. You know,
Right.
it can change, and it's okay if it changes, and it's okay if you have to start over. You know, you talk, man, how many times have you heard a story about somebody starting a new career when they're 50,
right.
6 years old, and they're restarting, and
Right.
that and it's okay, and it's necessary to accept where the work takes you, where the journey takes you, where the process takes you. For me, that was so about 7 years ago. I got my personal trainer certification, and I thought, okay, I was like, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I like lifting weights. I like running. I'm physically fit.
You like punching people?
Right, but not then though. You know
Oh,
what
really?
I mean? Then,
Okay,
yeah,
before
then.
that,
So
all right.
that was before. You know, that's kind of where it started. Is I was like, I'm going to be a personal trainer. I'm going to work one-on-one with people. I'm going to have all these clients. This is how I'm going to pay my bills. I'm going to be on easy street, right? And that's what I thought. And so I had a couple of clients, maybe like 2, and I applied for some jobs in some gyms, and nothing was popping up. And as I found out, personal trainers were a dime a dozen. And me, I was, 6 months into having my certification. I was 2 years into exploring strength training and stuff like that. I didn't know shit,
Right.
and I didn't have anything special to bring to the table. So through then, I had a buddy. He was drumming in our band, and we were talking one night. He was into weightlifting and stuff, and I was like, "Hey, I think I want to try like martial arts. I think I want to try jiu-jitsu." And he's like, "Well, I got a buddy that I've been training with." He's like, "Come and train with us." So we would go do our little thing, and eventually I got turned on to what eventually became American Top Team. I met Mark Stevens, and he let me coach a fitness class at the gym to kind of, it trades these for a membership, right? So I got to train a little bit, and I coached a little bit, right? So it was mutually beneficial. I got to cut my teeth as a trainer, and I got to experience what training, as a fighter was like. Eventually, I, fell in love with it. I stuck around the gym, and, that was 5 years ago. And now here I am, my primary source, my job is to train and to coach and stuff. But I didn't know, when I started lifting weights, that first day I picked up a dumbbell, I didn't know that fast forward 7 years, I was going to be a kickboxing coach.
Right.
I've got a couple MMA fights under my belt. I've got a Muay Thai fight under my belt. I didn't know that that's where it was going to go.
Right.
But I knew I wanted to somehow use this skill set to help people better their lives.
Sure.
And once I got away from wanting to get paid for it, once I got away from worried about the money, and I mean, for up till about 2 years ago, I had a full-time job, always, and this was just like a little side gig, something I was doing for fun. And it, you just stick with it, and you stick around, and you commit to it, and eventually it starts making sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, I like that. How have you seen from the day that day one started and the idea behind it, how have you seen it change or grow since then? Have you seen it change and grow?
Oh yeah, man, almost constantly it seems. So I go through the first thing. Yes, Melissa, thank you. Do what you love, and the money will follow. Absolutely, and that the most succinct way to put that for sure.
Yeah.
Once you find that purpose, and once the money doesn't matter, all of a sudden
Exactly.
it's there.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So when day one started, for me, it was a way to understand, embrace my depression, and not just cope with it, but to thrive with it. Kind of thrive in spite of it. Yes, I'm depressed. Yes, I feel this way, but I can still accomplish, and I can still achieve, and I can still move forward and get better. And a way to help me deal with my alcoholism. Especially, man, I would, all my friends drink, and every time we'd go out and see each other and stuff, there was parties and stuff, and there'd be drinking involved, and holy shit, man. The first couple of times I went to a social gathering sober, 15, 20 minutes, and then I had to leave.
Done.
It would, oh God, it would make me so anxious. It would make me so uncomfortable. But as I embraced more of that kind of day one mentality, like, okay, I can do this, and I just have to do it today. Because I still want to see my friends. I still want those connections. There's still people I love, still people I value having in my life.
Right.
They can just drink and not let it consume them, and not let it ruin their life. I can't do that right now. So I would, and that's where like I really found myself experiencing a lot of feelings of anxiety and stuff was in those situations. And then I started exploring how to embrace that and how to cope with that and how to feel that, and so you get into, so that led me to exploring psychosomatic relationships, what you think affecting how you feel, and understanding how to feel emotions, what does depression feel like, what does anxiety feel like, and then again, my good friend Ed Stevens, he's the one who started Together We Rise Foundation, and that essentially is jiu-jitsu based, and he wants to explore how to reach out to people who have gotten out of the service, who've served, especially combat veterans, and help them understand their either like the PTSD or what it sounds like to me from having talked to him is kind of like a separation anxiety, because you get in and you have this this brotherhood with these people, especially if you experience combat together, you know, and then when you get out of the military, it's just gone, and they lose their purpose, right? And so helping others discover their purpose, right? And how to understand and not just cope with feelings, right? Because coping mechanisms, like we talked about earlier, can be crippling if we rely on them too heavily. But to embrace them and understand them and thrive with them, you know, instead of getting rid of them, you know. So that, you know, that all ties into where a lot of my exploration went there, you know. So dealing and understanding with my personal, like, anxious issues and depression issues and stuff like that, kind of gave us you know, Eddie and I a point that we started discovering that our purposes weren't so far apart. You know, he was mainly focused in more of a military sector. I was a little more, you know, just kind of civilian, like everyday focus, but it was the same thing, right? And so from there, just kind of started studying habits and like happiness and what it takes to be happy, you know, and that's when I started exploring gratitude a little bit more. How to be grateful basically for everything that you have, whether it's good friends, good times, good day, right? These are easy things. Oh man, the sun's shining, I'm grateful for that, right? But also you kind of start being grateful for the abyss. I'm grateful that I'm experiencing these depression feelings. You know?
Grateful for that black eye as a reminder when you look in the mirror every day.
Yes,
you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely, man. And that's so, but instead of, you know, at first when you first start practicing it, you're like, I'm grateful for this because of these reasons. I'm grateful I got punched in the face because now I know, like, keep my hands up, you know. I'm grateful for being depressed today because I know tomorrow will be better. And eventually it starts becoming so habitual that you, instead of feeling forced to express it every single day, you just kind of feel it, you know. And what's so beautiful about that, the next thing that led me to was vulnerability. And being willing to express yourself and being willing to challenge these boundaries that you've created and force yourself to be expressive, right? One of the most amazing feelings, one of the most amazing things I think that I've felt change in my life is my ability to express my gratitude to my friends and to my family. I've always, so funerals, and somebody gives eulogy and all these people talk about how great this person was, and they have this beautiful service and everybody misses them and all that, and for me always, kind of in the back of my mind, I'm like, why do we wait? Why do we wait? Why do we wait? You know, and as I started researching and learning about vulnerability, I understand why we wait, because it's scary to tell somebody how you feel. Whether or not we feel like maybe it's not going to be reciprocated, maybe we don't want to appear vulnerable, right? And that's a lot of our coping mechanisms are designed to protect that feeling of vulnerability, that feeling of being exposed. And once you start breaking down those boundaries and you can be expressive, man, I've become so much closer with my friends, my family. I've had some really, really hard discussions with my mom, with my brothers, just really cutting and being raw and open and honest and stuff. And it's a hard discussion. There's tears involved. There's a lot of frustration and anger and stuff that just gets, you know, that's been bottled up, that's been coped with for so long. And then afterwards, it's better, you know, and so you start understanding the necessity of being vulnerable, and you start being grateful for the ability to be vulnerable and the things that being vulnerable yields.
You know, the things like, you know, the whole trust in the process idea, vulnerability brought you day one. I'm assuming that Ed with the Together We Rise, to a certain degree, had gone through those things himself. Did he, you know, and now that he puts that out there, and he's able to connect with people like you and more. You know, how many people, once you start talking about day one type mentality, have opened up to you?
countless, man.
Dude, it's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, the trust in the process was like 3 years ago when I first started using the hashtag. People still send me memes.
Yeah.
People still send me messages saying what they're going through.
Right.
And how, but I'm just gonna trust in the process. Like, that shit is awesome to me.
Right.
You know? But that wouldn't come about until you first step forward and be like, look, I gotta put myself out there.
Yes. Yep.
And it's reinforcing when you're vulnerable and you put yourself out there to have other people feel comfortable to do the same thing, because it's
Right.
crazy, because I know how alone, you know, you might feel like you are going through what you're going through. And as soon as you get that weight off your shoulders and say, this is what I'm going through, you realize you start seeing all these different people pop up saying, oh, I'm going through it too, or my so-and-so is going through it.
Yep.
Or, you know, and it's, like I said, it's reinforcing, and, you know, and I think it's a beautiful thing.
You know, what's awesome too is for someone to reach out and say, I went through this.
I went through it.
Right. This and then now you have someone you can get advice from, kind of pick their brain. You know what I mean? Like when you're in music, you know, and you're starting to put shows together and stuff like that. Going into it blind all by yourself, you're gonna make a lot of mistakes. But you have someone that you can hit up, like, oh, yo, hey, we're thinking about doing this and that. Well, how did you do it? How would you do this? How would you set this up, man? And they can give you that advice, so you can, not that you can cut corners ever, I don't think you can really skip steps, but it can help, you know what I mean? Because you know what to expect, you know, okay, well, if I do this, maybe this will go a little bit smoother.
Sure.
You know? So yeah, it's helpful to have either people that are currently going through it, or people that are starting to go through it, or people that have been through it, you know, and you really start to open up this network of people that you can rely on. And that's another thing, man. Vulnerability is opened me up, it's forced me to talk to people that I know I can talk to my friends, right? Start taking your own advice, you know, because if one of my friends is going through something, man, talk to me, I'm here for you, listen to me, talk to me. Right. Another huge day I had, I woke up in the morning and a buddy of mine had called me the night before, and I kind of blew it off. I was feeling shitty, but I woke up in the morning and I felt awful. I felt I was in a really dark place, and I was like, why am I avoiding this? I was like, because I don't want to talk to him because he's going to try to make me feel better. What the hell, man? I would tell somebody in that situation, reach out to your friends. So that morning I was like, take my own advice. So I sat down, I texted him out, and I was like tears rolling down my face. I was just in a really rough spot. Sent him a text message, hey man, I'm sorry I've been avoiding your calls. I'm in a really bad place right now. I will make some time this weekend to call you. Thank you for reaching out to me.
Right.
You know? And from then I just forced myself to follow my advice, to reach out to people that I know are going through it, or you know, and try to share or ask for help when I need it, you know. And just so much that we're scared to be vulnerable about. Like you said, man, all of a sudden you realize you're not the only one doing it.
Right. You're
not by yourself, you know. You're not as special as you think you are.
And that's a game changer.
Yeah, big time.
You know,
big time.
A lot of times when friends are going through just what people go through in general, I would find myself holding back from maybe giving advice or anything of that nature, because I'm like, well, damn, I'm not perfect. What can I say? What can I say to them? You know, that's without me sounding hypocritical or having it come off being disingenuous, but having someone to listen, even just to listen. You know, it makes the world of a difference.
For sure. Curtis, I see you there, man. Thank you, brother. Curtis Mosley, guys. He is the owner operator down at Bearing Jiu-Jitsu. He has been a huge support for the I don't know, 4 or so years that I've known him. He does a lot, not only for me, but for the community around here, man. If anybody embodies the day one mindset or the hold down upstate, what we're trying to accomplish in the community, it's absolutely that, man, right there. And real quick, Melissa, I'd touch on what you just talked about, how a lot of times it's socially acceptable, more so for women than for men, kind of to be emotionally vulnerable, right? Which kind of brings up the topic of like toxic masculinity. That's kind of been one of the hot button things. What's so beautiful in my life is that because of the culture we have at the gym and the culture that we try to perpetuate, is that I feel like there's not as much of a stigma about being vulnerable. You know, I've never felt someone's reflected on me poorly for expressing my vulnerability and for being open emotionally and stuff like that. But it's a social change that has to happen.
Sure.
You know? And when you build a community and you have like-minded people around and people that you can be expressive with and that aren't afraid to be expressive with you, it really helps to change stuff like that, because I think it's a crime, man. And you look at military personnel a lot too, guys that commit suicide once they get out.
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because they're afraid to be vulnerable, you know,
Right.
because it's socially unacceptable to be weak or to be expressive, man. And it just adds a whole new dimension to life when you can be like that. Like I said, through the people that have surrounded me in my life, the people that have come in to help me, and that I can in turn, you know, turn around and help. And even if it's like you said, like, I don't know what the hell I'm gonna say to this person. Sometimes you don't have to say anything.
Right.
Just be yourself.
Yeah.
Be open. Be vulnerable. Be honest. You really change not only somebody's life, not only one person's life, but you can help create a culture
Mm-hmm.
that's accepting of, you know, not being perfect, man. You know. So.
Just a quick recap on how this whole thing started. You said you were training with a friend. He was training before a fight.
Yeah.
And you find yourself, you know, does he know that he had such an impact on you at that time?
Yeah. So I've talked to him a little bit about that. I'll give him a quick little shout out, Taryn LaBelle. If you're watching this, man, you know that's you, brother. But we've talked about it, you know, kind of briefly here or there. I allude to it a little bit when I post about it, when I talk about it and stuff. But yeah, probably one of the first people that really impacted me. And I mean, all he was doing is the guy who we're talking about. He was just himself. He was just operating. He was just disciplined, and he was committed to
awesome.
making himself better. You know, and just set such an awesome example. You know,
Right.
and he started out as my student. You know, he came here, I trained him, I coached him, you know, all this stuff. And ultimately I was able to learn a ton from him and from watching him and how he conducted himself and everything. So again, back to the point of just be yourself, live the best you know how, and you're going to impact people in ways that you don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've had so many friends just from casual conversation. My friend Guy Javroni, I apologize, buddy, if I messed up that last name. He's a friend I met over at Bearing training, and he kind of offhandedly mentioned reading a book, Crushing It, by Gary Vee, and now we're here. You
Right.
know what I mean? Now there's T-shirts with Day One on it. There's stickers with Day One on it. There you go, my man.
That's it.
And you know, so it snowballs, right? And he wasn't afraid to be open with me. He wasn't afraid to be honest, you know. And it's just such a powerful thing, just to be genuine and to be vulnerable, not be scared of it, you know. So that's a huge point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, and I look forward to seeing how it continues to expand and snowball, you know,
me too.
from day one to things like cage side combos.
Yeah.
You know, every day it just keeps changing, but every day is an opportunity
Yes.
to not passively but aggressively
Yeah.
take advantage of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I like aggressively better even than active sometimes, man, because sometimes you just gotta go for it.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
awesome, man. Yeah,
I say we wrap it up, man. It was
absolutely.
good chatting with you.
Yeah, always.
Appreciate you guys for popping in, for leaving the comments down at the bottom and all the likes. Feel free to give us a share. We're going to be back here next week. Is it? Are you still going to be
Next
here next
week,
week?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yes,
next
sir.
week, next
Yep.
Tuesday.
All right, awesome. Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you soon.
Peace.